Greetings, everyone. This is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever, and today's video is why I don't do debates. So there was a time in the past where I would take part in debates, especially about the videos I do. This is not something I would normally do on someone else's video, but there was a time where I would kind of go back and forth with people on the videos, just to kind of make a point. But then I came to a certain realization a few years ago, as the older I got, is that essentially, the debate had no real purpose or meaning to it, and all that was happening was people were flexing their egos, including myself. So there's a certain point where I just decided that there's no reason to debate someone who has a completely different worldview than I do, comes from a completely different culture than I do, doesn't speak the same language as I do, and doesn't even live in the same place that I do. Being that, if someone, for example, brings this point of view that's completely the opposite of anything that I know to be reality, or has been proven to me to be reality, then I just kind of ignore it because there's no real reason or room for a debate. So that would be the simple answer of why I don't do debates. But if somebody wanted a more complex one, then there's something I could do just in a short way as much as possible. Now, this, I think, this slide kind of relates to the way I see things, especially when it comes to the different people who I had debates or discussions with or have differences with in various areas. On one side, you have Torath Moshe, which goes in a certain direction and has certain types of, Jews and also Israelis that, go by that line of thinking that comes from a certain place with a certain type of language, culture, and, ethnicity attached to it, as well as ethics and in history, for example. On the other side, you have groups of ideas that kind of lead in a completely different direction than Torah Moshe, and those sides, again, will go to a certain place, and there's no connection between the two sides in terms of where they go. A person can claim that where they started, may be a similar path, but where they go is something completely different. So if you have these two different sides that have two different like ways of dealing with the world and are from completely different and distinct areas and lead to two different places, it doesn't make any sense for either side to debate unless the idea is simply to kind of express or stress these egos that people have. Because for example, if someone is looking and saying, okay, well, this is what I believe, but the other person says, well, this is what I know to be the truth, and it's based upon an objective concept, then the two sides don't really meet. Now, there's no, I don't have a problem with debating someone who's in Torah Moshe, who has the same concept ideals that I do, and that we just kind of differ in a couple of areas. But when it comes to something that's completely different, at some point, the debate doesn't really go anywhere. And that's one of the reasons that I kind of developed a list of questions that I asked to people who want to challenge me with debates and things like that. And essentially, I remember one guy asked me this. He wanted me to debate someone who was a particular type of Hebrew Israelite. And I said to him, like, okay, well, I don't really do debates. I don't see the reason there would be a debate between the two of us. He obviously has something completely different than I do, and we don't hold by the same culture. We don't even live in the same place. And the person kept pushing for the debate. And one of the things that they did to kind of, I guess, try to, like, I guess, push my ego, so to speak, was to say, well, what are you afraid? Now my response to that was, yes, I'm very afraid. I'm very afraid of the person you're talking about. That's why I won't debate them. And the reason I would say something like that is because I'm not concerned about an ego. I don't care about, my ego. If I presented something and someone doesn't like it, they can just simply do their own little videos and, say, okay, I've beaten, Ahave Ever, which is fine. I'm not really doing this to like beat anybody in a presentation. The main thing I would say is that there's information that I, have in the type of world I live in, and I can understand how that's completely different than someone else's worldview. So essentially, that's one of the reasons that's the main reason I would say I don't debate, because at some point it doesn't lead anywhere. They lead to, two sides go to completely different locations and places. A debate doesn't really serve any real purpose except for to like exercise someone's ego. Now, someone who holds by Torah Moshe, again, I'm looking at everything that deals with, the Torah concept of what is necessary and what is completely unnecessary. And that's something that comes into practice every day, and that's something, that I would say, would define how I handle any questions or, confrontations and things like that. Because at some point, if it's not Torah Moshe, what it doesn't really serve any real purpose for me, for example. And again, everybody has their own little view of the world, and I don't have to accept it, and they don't have to accept my view of the world. And as far as I'm concerned, if someone believes that they have a right position, then they just do their thing and wherever they do it, and go by it. And at some point, the truth will prove, which side is correct. And again, that's not the point of it anyway. The point would be that all humanity holds by the truth. But again, something to be determined true has to be proven to be true. And the Torath Moshe perspective, as I've mentioned in other videos, is something that is historically ancient, accurate, and authoritative. So that's the reason why I don't do debates. This is Ehav Ever from the Chronicles of Ehav Ever, and I thank you for listening. Bye.